Pam Bondi was no stranger to tough interviews. As Florida's former Attorney General, she had faced aggressive reporters, partisan attacks, and heated debates. But tonight was different. Something felt off. The audience at The Late Show with Stephen Colbert buzzed with excitement as the lights dimmed and the cameras rolled. The energy in the room was electric. Pam adjusted her blazer as Colbert, smirking across from her, wasted no time. "Let's talk about corruption," he began. Pam raised an eyebrow. "That's a broad topic." Colbert chuckled theatrically. "Oh, don't play coy. You've spent years defending some of the most powerful political figures in the country. Don't you think the American people deserve better?" Pam remained composed. "I've always worked to uphold the law, whether people agree with my positions or not. My record speaks for itself," Colbert scoffed. "Does it? Because many people, by many I mean pretty much everyone with a conscience, believe you've spent your career protecting the guilty rather than defending the law." A murmur rippled through the audience. Pam's jaw clenched, but she didn't break eye contact. "That's a loaded statement, Stephen. If you have evidence of wrongdoing, present it, rather than relying on dramatic accusations." Colbert's smirk widened. "Oh, I thought you'd never ask." Behind him, the studio screens lit up with headlines questioning Pam's integrity. Claims that she had shielded corrupt officials, a barrage of negative press clearly curated to undermine her credibility. The audience gasped. Some chuckled, others whispered. Pam kept her expression unreadable, but inside, her blood boiled. Colbert leaned back, feigning innocence. "Look at that, just a coincidence, I'm sure." Pam exhaled sharply. "You're not interested in a real discussion, are you? You're playing a scripted narrative." Colbert laughed. "Oh, so now I'm the bad guy. Pam, you're the one on trial here, metaphorically speaking, of course." Pam sat up straighter. "No, Stephen, I think you are." The audience fell silent. Colbert's smug expression faltered, just slightly. Pam continued, her voice calm but firm. "This isn't an interview. It's an ambush, and I won't be part of it." She pushed back her chair and stood. The crowd gasped. Colbert raised his hands in mock surrender. "Whoa, where are you going? We're just getting started." Pam turned sharply toward him. Her next words would shake the studio to its core. "You didn't invite me here for an interview. You invited me for a trial by media, and I don't answer to you." Colbert forced a chuckle, trying to regain control. "Come on, Pam, don't be so dramatic. This is just a little spirited conversation," Pam scoffed. "This isn't a conversation, Stephen. It's a setup, and you know it," the audience murmured. Colbert, sensing he was losing control, turned to his usual playbook. Mockery. "Oh, so now you're a victim?" he asked, voice dripping with sarcasm. "I thought tough politicians like you could handle a little heat." Pam crossed her arms. "Heat is one thing. A blatant smear campaign is another." She turned toward the camera, addressing the millions of viewers watching at home. "America, this is what they do. They don't debate you. They don't challenge your ideas. They destroy your character." The crowd gasped. Colbert's eyes flickered with unease. Pam continued, her voice steady. "This isn't just about me. It's about anyone who challenges their agenda. If they can do this to me, imagine what they can do to you." A hush fell over the audience. This wasn't how these segments were supposed to go. The guest wasn't supposed to fight back. Colbert shifted uncomfortably, then forced a laugh. "All right, folks, I think Pam needs a little break. Maybe some water?" Pam raised an eyebrow. "Is that your way of telling me to sit down and take it?" Colbert smirked, but for the first time that night it didn't reach his eyes. Regaining his confidence, Colbert smirked. "I just don't want you to leave before I get to my favorite part." He gestured to the studio screen behind him. It flickered, then flashed a headline that sent a chill through the room. "Breaking Secret. Files revealed. FBI investigating." Pam Bondi, the audience collectively gasped. Pam's eyes narrowed as she slowly turned back to Colbert, her expression unreadable. The host leaned forward, savoring the moment. "Care to explain that one, Pam?" She stared him down, her heart pounding. Two choices: fight back immediately or walk out and let the world wonder. She made her decision. Pam took a step back from her chair, then another. Without breaking eye contact, she turned and walked off the stage. The audience erupted into chaos. Colbert's grin vanished. "Whoa, wait. Pam, don't you want to clear this up?" Pam didn't stop, didn't look back. She knew the truth, and she knew exactly who had leaked that story. This wasn't just a hit piece. This was a warning, and the real fight, it was just beginning. Pam Bondi strode through the backstage corridors of the Late Show studio, her heels clicking against the polished floor. The roar of the audience still echoed in the background, but she had bigger problems now. Melissa, her longtime aide, rushed toward her, eyes wide. "Pam, what just happened in there?" Pam didn't slow down. "They set me up," she said sharply, "and they just made their biggest mistake." Melissa struggled to keep up. "That FBI thing, was it real? Are they actually investigating you?" Pam's expression hardened. "No, that was a manufactured leak." Melissa paled. "Then who did it?" Pam slowed, glancing around cautiously before lowering her voice. "Stephen Colbert doesn't have that kind of power. He's just the mouthpiece." Melissa swallowed hard. "Then who's pulling the strings?" Pam exhaled sharply. "That's what we're about to find out." Then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Pam Bondi. A low, distorted voice came through the line. "You should have stayed in your seat, Pam." Pam froze. The voice was cold, calculated. Not Colbert. Someone else. Someone watching. "You think this is about a talk show?" The voice continued. "You have no idea what you just walked into." Melissa's eyes widened as she saw the color drain from Pam's face. "Who is it?" she whispered. Pam didn't respond. Her grip tightened around the phone. "What do you want?" she demanded. A dark chuckle. "It's not about what I want. Ms. Bondi, it's about what happens next." A pause. Then the final word sent a chill through her spine. "Watch your back." The line went dead. Pam slowly lowered the phone. Melissa grabbed her arm. "Pam, who was that?" Pam stared at the screen, her pulse racing. Whoever it was, they weren't bluffing. They had just declared war, and Pam Bondi was ready to fight. Pam stood in the dimly lit hallway, gripping her phone tightly. The unknown caller's warning echoed in her mind. Melissa's voice broke through. "Pam, we need to get out of here, now." Pam nodded, adjusting her blazer. She moved toward the exit, but just as they reached the door, a swarm of reporters descended. "Ms. Bondi, any comment on the FBI investigation? Are the allegations true? Why did you storm off the show?" Pam's jaw tightened. They were waiting for her, just like they planned. Melissa stepped in front. No comment, but Pam had other plans. She turned to face the cameras, her expression sharp and controlled. "The American people should ask themselves something," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Why did this breaking news magically appear the second I pushed back on live television?" A murmur rippled through the press. Some hesitated. Others exchanged glances. For the first time, doubt flickered in their eyes. Pam Bondi wasn't backing down, she was just getting started. Some reporters glanced at their phones, checking for updates. Pam stood unwavering. "I'll tell you why," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "Because I refused to be part of a scripted hit job. And when that didn't work," she held up her phone. "I got a warning." The reporters leaned in. "A warning from who?" Pam smirked slightly, but there was no humor in her eyes. "That's the real question, isn't it?" Before they could press further, she turned and strode toward the black SUV waiting at the curb. Melissa slipped in beside her, slamming the door shut. "Pam, that was risky," she hissed. "You just made yourself an even bigger target." Pam exhaled, staring out the tinted window as the driver pulled away. "Good." Melissa frowned. "Good?" Pam's voice was steady. Whoever's behind this just made their first move. Now it's my turn. Melissa hesitated. Pam, we don't even know who they are yet. Before Pam could respond, her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. This time she didn't hesitate. Pam Bondi. A deep voice, calmer than the first, came through the line. You should have just played along, Ms. Bondi. Pam's grip tightened. She knew that voice. And now, she knew exactly who was behind this. Pam sat stiffly in the back seat, the hum of the engine barely registering. Her mind was racing. The voice on the other end was deliberate, composed, unmistakable. Alan Mitchell, media mogul, billionaire. The real puppet master behind the hit job. Pam's jaw tightened. I was wondering when you'd show up. A slight chuckle. Pam, you always were quick. Her expression darkened. Is that why you planted the fake FBI story, to keep me in check? Mitchell sighed, as if speaking to a misbehaving child. Planted? No. Let's call it a strategic release. Pam clenched her teeth. You like controlling people, don't you? Controlling the narrative, making sure no one questions you. The amusement drained from Mitchell's voice. And yet here you are, questioning me. Pam didn't flinch. I know you funded the operation that put those surveillance files in Colbert's studio. I know you're behind all of it. A pause. Then a slow, calculated breath. Do you have any idea who you're messing with, Pam? Her heartbeat quickened, but her voice remained steady. I know exactly who you are. And I know you just made the biggest mistake of your life. Mitchell chuckled again, but this time there was an edge to it. You always were a fighter, he mused. But let me give you a friendly warning. Walk away while you still can. Pam smirked. You think I'm scared of you? Mitchell's tone dropped, colder than before. You should be. Pam leaned forward, gripping the phone tighter. Is that a threat? Silence. Then, in a voice that sent ice through her veins, he answered. It's a guarantee. The line went dead. Pam lowered the phone slowly, staring at the blank screen. Melissa, who had been listening intently, whispered, Pam? What did he mean? Pam exhaled sharply, tucking the phone away. It means we just made him nervous. Melissa blinked. Isn't that bad? Pam's lips curled into a knowing smirk. No. It's exactly what we needed. Alan Mitchell had just revealed his hand, and Pam Bondi was about to play her next move. Pam sat in silence as the Washington skyline blurred past. Mitchell's words echoed in her mind. You should be scared, it's a guarantee. Melissa shifted uncomfortably beside her. Pam, what if he's serious? Pam turned to her, her voice unwavering. Oh, he's serious. And that's exactly why we have to move fast. Melissa frowned. Move fast, what does that mean? Pam pulled out her phone and dialed a secure line. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Bondi. Pam's shoulders relaxed slightly. Thompson, we have a problem. Special Agent Daniel Thompson of the FBI, one of the few people in Washington she still trusted. A sigh on the other end. Let me guess. Mitchell. Pam nodded. He called me directly. A pause. Thompson was processing. That's bold. Too bold. Pam's voice was calm but firm. He's getting desperate. He's trying to scare me into backing down. Thompson's voice darkened. Pam, I don't like this. Alan Mitchell doesn't make threats. Pam met Melissa's worried gaze. No, he makes promises. Reporters glanced at their phones, scrolling for updates. Pam stood firm, unshaken. I'll tell you why, she said, her voice slicing through the murmurs. Because I refused to play along with a scripted hit job. And when that didn't work, she held up her phone. I got a warning. The press leaned in, their curiosity sharpened. A warning from who? Pam smirked, but there was no humor in it. That's the real question, isn't it? Before they could fire more questions, she turned on, her heel and strode toward the black SUV idling at the curb. Melissa slipped in beside her, slamming the door shut. "Pam, that was reckless," she hissed. "You just made yourself an even bigger target." Pam exhaled, her gaze fixed on the city blurring past through the tinted window. "Good." Melissa frowned. "Good?" Pam's voice was steady. "Whoever's behind this just played their first move. Now it's my turn." Melissa hesitated. "Pam, we don't even know who they are yet." Before Pam could respond, her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. This time she answered without hesitation. Pam Bondi. The voice on the other end was deep, calm, measured. "You should have just played along, Ms. Bondi." Pam's grip tightened. She knew that voice. And now she knew exactly who was behind this. She sat stiffly in the back seat, the hum of the engine barely registering. Her mind was already racing ahead. The voice was deliberate, controlled, unmistakable. Alan Mitchell, media mogul, billionaire. The man pulling the strings behind the smear campaign. Pam's jaw tightened. "I was wondering when you'd finally crawl out of the shadows." A low chuckle. "Pam, Pam, Pam." Always quick on the draw. Her expression darkened. "Is that why you planted the fake FBI story? To keep me in check?" Mitchell sighed, his tone condescending. "Planted? No. Let's call it a strategic release." Pam clenched her teeth. "You're used to controlling people, aren't you? Controlling the narrative, making sure no one questions you." The amusement drained from his voice. "And yet here you are, questioning me." Pam didn't flinch. "I know you funded the operation that put those surveillance files in Colbert's studio. I know you orchestrated all of it." A pause. Then, a slow, calculated breath. "Do you have any idea who you're messing with, Pam?" Her pulse quickened, but her voice remained steady. "I know exactly who you are, and I know you just made the biggest mistake of your life." Mitchell chuckled again, but there was an edge to it now. "You always were a fighter," he mused. "But let me give you a friendly warning. Walk away while you still can." Pam smirked. "You think I'm scared of you?" His tone dropped, turning cold. "You should be." Pam leaned forward, gripping the phone tighter. "Is that a threat?" Silence. Then in a voice like ice, he answered, "It's a guarantee." The line went dead. Pam lowered the phone slowly, staring at the blank screen. Melissa, who had been listening intently, whispered, "Pam, what did he mean?" Pam exhaled sharply, tucking the phone away. "It means we just made him nervous." Melissa blinked. "Isn't that bad?" Pam's lips curled into a knowing smirk. "No, it's exactly what we needed." Alan Mitchell had just revealed his hand, and Pam Bondi was about to make her next move. The Washington skyline streaked past in a blur of lights. Mitchell's last words echoed in her mind. "You should be scared. It's a guarantee." Melissa shifted beside her, uneasy. "Pam, what if he means it?" Pam turned, her voice unwavering. "Oh, he means it. That's why we have to move fast." Melissa frowned. "Move fast? What does that even mean?" Pam pulled out her phone and dialed a secure number. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Bondi." Pam exhaled slightly. "Thompson, we have a problem. Special Agent Daniel Thompson, one of the few people left in Washington she still trusted." A tired sigh came through the line. "Let me guess. Mitchell." Pam nodded. "He called me directly." A pause. She could hear Thompson processing. "That's bold. Too bold." Pam's voice was even. "He's getting desperate. He wants to scare me into backing down." Thompson's voice darkened. "Pam, I don't like this. Alan Mitchell doesn't make threats." Pam met Melissa's worried gaze. "No." She turned back to the window, her expression unreadable. "He makes promises." A panicked voice crackled in Pam's earpiece. "Pam, they're coming after you. Get out of there." She didn't hesitate. Pam burst through the kitchen doors. shoving past startled staff, her eyes locking onto the side exit. Almost there. Hand clamped around her wrist, she whipped around. Alan Mitchell. He smiled. Cold, calculated, dangerous. Leaving so soon, Miss Bondi? He asked smoothly. Pam held her ground. You're making a mistake, Alan. His smile widened. No, Pam. You did. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Mitchell's grip was firm, controlled, like a predator toying with its prey. You're bold, he mused, almost amused. I'll give you that. But boldness only gets you so far. Pam didn't flinch. And what's your plan, Alan? Have your goons drag me out the back door? Mitchell chuckled, shaking his head. Oh no, that would be too easy. He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping. I don't need to silence you, Pam. His smirk deepened. I already did. Pam's stomach twisted. Mitchell gestured subtly. A security guard handed him a phone. He turned the screen toward her. A breaking news alert flashed. Pam Bondi under federal investigation for wiretapping Alan Mitchell's private event. Her breath hitched. Mitchell's smirk grew. You walked right into it. The moment you stepped onto my property, I had you. Pam's mind raced. He planted the story before she even arrived. Melissa's panicked voice crackled in her ear. Pam, the press is running with it. They're calling you a criminal. Mitchell tilted his head. What's wrong? You're usually so quick with a response. Pam's mind snapped into focus. She knew men like Alan Mitchell. He wanted her to panic. He wanted her to believe she'd lost. She wasn't about to give him that satisfaction. Pam straightened her shoulders, a smirk tugging at her lips. Alan, she said coolly, do you really think I didn't come prepared? For a fraction of a second, Mitchell's expression flickered. She saw it, the doubt. Pam lifted her chin. You've spent your whole career controlling the narrative, but there's just one problem. She leaned in. I'm better at it than you. Mitchell's smirk vanished. Pam pulled out her own phone, tapped a button, and turned the screen toward him. A live feed played. His voice, his confession, caught on a private microphone, admitting to setting her up. Mitchell's face paled. Pam whispered, Smile, Alan. You're on air. Melissa's voice erupted in her earpiece. Pam, it's working. The feed is trending everywhere. People are turning on him. Mitchell's hands clenched into fists. Hugh. Pam didn't wait. She spun on her heel and walked away, heart hammering. Behind her, Alan Mitchell was shouting orders, his carefully crafted empire collapsing in real time. She had played her best move, and she had won. Pam strode through the grand hallway of Mitchell's estate, her heels clicking against the marble. The tension was thick, but she didn't look back. Not at Mitchell. Not at the wreckage of his power. She had delivered the fatal blow. And now, the world was watching. Melissa's voice came through her earpiece, breathless with excitement. Pam, it's happening. The media is flipping. His own allies are turning on him. Pam smirked. Good. She pushed open the heavy doors, stepping into the cool night air. Chaos, reporters, flashing cameras, security scrambling. She had exposed Alan Mitchell in real time, and the world was eating it up. A swarm of journalists rushed toward her, microphones shoved forward. Miss Bondi, did Alan Mitchell try to set you up? Is it true he's been running an illegal surveillance operation? Pam turned toward the cameras. She didn't need to say much. Mitchell had already destroyed himself. All I'll say is this, Pam stated firmly. When powerful people think they're untouchable, they get sloppy. She let that sink in. Tonight the world saw the truth. Reporters erupted with more questions, but Pam was already walking toward the waiting SUV. Melissa was inside, grinning ear to ear. As Pam slid into the seat, Melissa shook her head in disbelief. You did it. Pam exhaled sharply, leaning her head back for the first time all night. Yeah. Then after a beat, she smirked. And I'm just getting started. Across the estate, Alan Mitchell stood frozen, fists clenched at his sides. His empire was burning in real time, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. A security guard hesitated before stepping forward. Sir, the FBI just arrived. They have a warrant. Mitchell's jaw locked. He had lost. But as the agent stormed in, his rage turned cold. Pam Bondi had won this round, but the game wasn't over. A dimly lit FBI safehouse. Pam sat at the table, fingers wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee. The adrenaline had worn off, leaving behind the weight of everything that had just happened. Across from her, Melissa scrolled through her phone, eyes flicking across the screen. It's everywhere. She looked up. The footage, the audio. Mitchell's completely exposed. Pam nodded, exhaustion in her voice. And what about him? Melissa hesitated. The FBI took him in an hour ago. A pause. But he's already made a call. Pam's stomach tightened. To who? Before Melissa could answer, the door swung open. Agent Thompson stepped inside, face grim. You were right, he said. Mitchell had backup plans. Pam's grip on the cup tightened. How bad? Thompson pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. A breaking news alert appeared. Alan Mitchell claims political persecution, files lawsuit against Pam Bondi and the FBI. Pam exhaled sharply. Melissa's eyes widened. You've got to be kidding me. Thompson nodded. He's playing the victim, using his media influence to spin this, claiming the government and... He glanced at Pam. Political operatives are conspiring against him. Pam leaned back in her chair, staring at the screen. So what? He thinks he can win in the court of public opinion? Thompson's expression hardened. Pam, this isn't just about optics anymore. Mitchell has real connections, people in places that matter. Pam finished his thought. If he walks away from this, he won't just come for me. He'll destroy everything. Silence. Then Pam sat up straight. So we finish it. Melissa blinked. What do you mean? Pam's voice was steady. We don't just expose Mitchell. We expose everyone connected to him. Thompson hesitated. That's a big move, Pam. You're talking about taking on an entire network. Pam nodded. Exactly, and we do it now, while the world is watching. Melissa glanced between them. How? Pam grabbed her phone, tapping into a live broadcast. A news anchor was already discussing the scandal. The world was glued to their screens. Pam lifted her chin. We tell the truth, she said simply, loud enough that no one can cover it up. A holding room. Alan Mitchell sat, suit slightly wrinkled but his composure intact. Across from him, his lawyer flipped through documents. We'll file an emergency motion in the morning. Mitchell barely acknowledged him. His focus was elsewhere. Because Alan Mitchell knew one thing for certain. Pam Bondi had won the battle, but he was still determined to win the war. Leaning back in his chair, a slow smirk played at his lips. Let's see how far she's willing to go. A national news broadcast. Pam Bondi sat in front of the camera. The world was watching. She took a deep breath. Then, she told everything. Names, deals, corrupt connections. Everything Alan Mitchell had spent decades building, burned in minutes. The headlines the next morning. Mitchell Empire collapses. Mass investigations underway. Pam Bondi had done what no one else had dared. She hadn't just exposed Alan Mitchell. She had beaten the system. And this time, there was no coming back. 3 weeks later, Alan Mitchell's empire was in ruins, indicted on multiple charges. His network dissolved. His allies abandoned him, and Pam Bondi? She was still standing. As she walked through the doors of a new law office, her phone buzzed. A message from Agent Thompson. It's over. You won. Pam smirked. No, she hadn't just won. She had changed the game forever.